Hello and welcome to Truth Be Told. I am Jeff Jones and I'm very, very happy and glad that you are with me today, joining me here on this channel. I'm going to do something today that I would not normally do. Some are going to consider it very arrogant. Some are going to consider it very prideful and that I should not do it. But I'm going to do it anyway. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal to you my portfolio. My financial portfolio. I'm just opening it up to you. I'm going to show you my portfolio today, and just let that sink in as we go further into the teaching of in the Word of God. Are you ready? Here's my portfolio. I just want to show it to you. Yes, I have gold in my portfolio. Yes, this is 1 gram of 24 karat gold. Now, lest you get all carried away here, this isn't part of my portfolio. This is my portfolio. This is what I possess. This is the value of what my life has come to, it seems. I have one, and my wife has one too, by the way. So we have a total of 2 grams of gold. This is Swiss gold, but nevertheless, it's 24 karat. This is real gold. This doesn't have alloys in it. No, this is the real stuff. This is the real thing. Gold. We're going to talk a little bit about Job. And you've heard me use this verse on many occasions, but here's the thing. We're going to tie into part of it today, just part of what he was talking about, and try to see what God is telling us today concerning becoming pure gold. Now look, Job has had a very difficult life. A very difficult life. God has allowed Satan to come into his life and take everything except for his wife and maybe his house. That's it. He's lost all of his land. He's a very, very uber rich guy, land-wise, livestock-wise, all gone. His children gone, killed, all in the matter of just a couple of days or hours. It just was no time at all, just gone. Job is being comforted by some of his friends. 3 friends that I don't think we would want friends like this, but nevertheless, they were his friends. And they're going back and forth as to what the problem is and why he's experiencing what he's experiencing and why he's in this furnace that he's in, this testing, this really difficult part in his life. And in Job 23 starting with verse number 2, Job is responding to one of his accusers, his friends. And here's what he says. Then Job answered and said, "Today also my complaint is bitter." That means he's defiant. He is rebellious. "My hand is heavy on account of my groaning." I'm really in pain. I'm hurting in spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically. Pick something. He is in pain. He is suffering with every part of his being. Oh, he says that I knew where I might find God. That I might come to him, even to his seat of judgment where he would hold court. I would lay my case before him and I would fill my mouth with arguments. I would know that he would answer me and he would understand what he would say to me, and I would understand what he would say to me. Would he contend with me in the greatness of his power? No. He would pay attention to me. There an upright man can argue with God, and I would be acquitted forever by my judge. This is where Job feels that God is maybe playing hide and seek with him. You ever play hide and seek as a kid? Job said, if I could just find God, if I could just go to where he is, I would confront him with why all this stuff is happening in my life and why he's allowed all this suffering and pain and agony and turmoil in my life. Because I have valid and just arguments against him and his actions. But I can't find him. I don't know where he's at. I talk to him. I pray to him. I seek him. I can't find him anywhere. He says in verse 8 of 23, "Behold, I go forward, but he's not there. I go backward, but I don't perceive him. On the left hand, when he is working, I don't behold him. And when he turns to the right hand, I don't see him. Try as I may, I can't find him. No matter where I look, I don't see him. Is my life worth nothing more than just a game to him? I've been faithful to him. I've served him. I've honored him with my life. And now this is how he treats me? Question. You knew it was coming. You ever been there? Have you ever felt that way? You You ever felt like the furnace in which you are in and being tested, it just seems to never end, seems to go on and on and on? We've all been there. I know you've experienced it, and I've experienced it when everything you know to do, you're doing to please God, to serve God, and then bam! Your world is rocked with pain and hardship and bad news and suffering. Nothing seems to go right. No matter how hard you pray, no matter how much you fast, no matter how generous you become, God seems to be an absentee dad, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if you stop right there in your life, if you stop right there and go no further in your faith, you know you're heading to the deep end or to the far end of the pier, where you're going to be driving off the pier into the deep end of despair and hopelessness. You know that's where you're going. But here's the thing, Job doesn't stop there, does he? No, he comes to verse 10 of chapter 23 and he says this, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tried me, when he has tested me, I shall come out as gold." I shall come out as gold. Let's talk about 4 truths about being tested or tried by God. These are 4 truths that it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how long you've been serving Christ. These are 4 truths about being tested by God. Number 1, all true godliness will bear any test that may be applied to it, just as real gold will bear any degree of heat without the gold being injured or destroyed. All true godliness will endure any test, any heat, any furnace that God brings us into without it being harmed. Just like gold will not be harmed no matter the heat that is put to it. Heat doesn't turn gold into ungold or even to more gold. Heat doesn't affect gold that way. Heat has no negative effect on the gold that goes into the heat. In fact, the more intense the heat, the purer the gold when the gold is removed. Why? Because the heat separates the gold from all the forms of alloys and impurities for the purpose of leaving only pure gold. So it doesn't matter. The gold is, if it goes into the heat, if it goes into 1,000 degrees or 1,000,000,000 degrees, gold is still going to be gold. And what happens is the hotter the heat, the more it separates the gold from the infirmities, from the impurities, from the alloys that were attached to it. Number 2, the purpose of trials, the purpose of testing in our life as Christians is to purify us, to make us brighter, to make us more valuable, just like the intense heat makes gold more valuable. That's what it does. The more impurities that come out of gold, the purer it is, the more valuable it becomes, the more beautiful it is. God, had to send Israel into captivity to Babylon because they had embraced the alloys, the impurities of the cultures around them that they thought were just as important in their lives as their obedience to God. They thought, well, we can just add this in, and we can add this in, and we can add this in. All things that God said, don't add it in. But they added them in, and they forgot who God was to them. They forgot what God had done for them. So God has to remind them. He sends them into captivity into Babylon. And while they're there, while they're in captivity, God speaks to Israel through Jeremiah. That we quote this verse all the time, and mainly incorrectly, I might add. In Jeremiah 29:11, while they're in captivity, God sends a message to Israel and says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Look, I'm not going to leave you in captivity, but I've got great plans for your life. I've got great prosperity coming your way. I've got a long life ahead for you. But I first have to send you into the heat of captivity to another nation, so that those alloys that you've attached to yourself from all the other cultures around you, those need to be burned off. They need to be separated off from you so that I get your best and not your worst. When God is testing you, when God brings you into the fire, He is attempting to remove the dross out of your life and leave the pure gold that he has found and wants only in your life. Number 3, there are often a lot of alloys in the life of a Christian that have to be burned taken away, burned off, that can only be taken away in the furnace of testing and trial. Listen, let's talk just a second about gold. Gold is an element, meaning that it's all gold. When it's gold, it's gold. It's all gold. Gold bullion is pure gold, or at least as pure as they can possibly make it. Most jewelry is not considered pure gold because it's too soft. And so they alloy jewelry with other metals, silver, copper, and other things to make it harder, to make it last longer. Sorry, not laster. Make it last longer and more durable. The gold carat, when you talk about carat, the highest we can have is 24 karat gold. That's the most pure we can come up with. Each carat is 1/24th of the whole. So a 10 karat gold is 10 parts gold and 14 parts other material, other metals. 18 karat is 18 parts gold and 6 parts other metal. 24 karat is all gold. White gold is usually an alloy containing about 75% gold and 25% nickel and zinc. So if it's stamped 18 karat gold, then it's basically 75% gold. And then we have what's called fool's gold. Fool's gold is generally made of pyrite. Other things as well, chalcopyrite, those other things as well. But it's not real gold. Fool's gold will chip and crack, but real gold will indent or bend. Job doesn't say that once God has finished testing him, that he comes out of the fire, that he's going to come out overlaid with gold, or that he will resemble gold, or he'll be white gold, or he'll be fool's gold. He said, I'm coming out, I'm going to be pure gold even after he tests me. He doesn't say that when he comes out of the testing, he's going to be anything other than gold and pure gold. He says, I'm coming out of the furnace, I'm coming out with greater value, greater worth, I'm coming out with greater usability than I went in. I'm coming out as pure. Why? Because I've been separated from the alloys, the impurities. God is doing a work in my life, and even though Satan didn't know it, and we get the backside view that Satan has been allowed to take him into the fire. How does God know if we need to go into the furnace for testing or for trial? How does he know there are alloys or impurities that have crept into our lives, reducing the purity of the gold? It's through testing. And there are various types of testing, various forms of testing. Only God knows what's truly in our hearts, but there are times that we will be tested to see what kind of mark we leave what kind of mark we leave on the world around us after he has rubbed us into some scenario that draws out what's really in us. I remember watching my friend Bill in New York in his jewelry store test gold that would come into his store, jewelry. He'd scratch the piece of jewelry on a jeweler's stone, and depending on the color of the mark that it would leave on the stone, he would then determine if it was real gold or how much, depending on the color that was left behind. God will test us by putting us or allowing us to go into circumstances, into situations that reveals if there are alloys in us, impurities in us that have been added into our lives that are not of God. Anger, pride, arrogance, self-righteousness, self-dependence, all the self family. Maybe we've come to accept certain sins as acceptable and tolerable. We've dumbed down the message of the cross, that the cross is the only possible way to know God. Ultimately, that alloy keeps us from being who God wants us to be, 24 karat. That alloy most of the time is self. Noah had to die to self when God said, Noah, build a boat. Abraham had to die to self when God said, kill your son. Job had to die to self when God said, I'm going to allow Satan to come in and take his best shot at you. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had to die to their selves when God said, into the literal fire you go. Jesus Christ had to die to himself in the Garden of Gethsemane when he said, nevertheless, Father, your will be done. And Jesus and God the Father said, on to the cross you go to pay for the sins of that you didn't commit for people who hate you. God will test us. He will test us to show us. He knows to show us what's in us. I love the way A.W. Tozer puts it, and he does it this way, The Pursuit of God, chapter 2, the blessedness of possessing nothing. He says this, the ancient curse of self will not go painlessly. The tough old miser within us will not lie down and die obediently to our command. He must be torn out of our heart like plant from the soil. He must be extracted in agony and blood like a tooth from the jaw. He must be expelled from our soul by violence as Christ expelled the money changers from the temple. And we shall need to steel ourselves against his piteous begging and to recognize it as the springing out of self-pity, one of the most reprehensible sins of the human heart. I love that. Dietrich Bonhoeffer says, when Christ calls a man, he bids him come and die. And just like there is in gold, the alloys can only be removed by the fiery trials of affliction. Nothing else will remove the alloys in your life, the impurities in your life. There's nothing better than the intense heat to purify who we are. Number 4, as much as we already do, a true Christian should never dread or fear the trials of God. They will not hurt us. Most bacteria thrive at between 40 and 140 degrees Fahrenheit. That's why they say cook meats, various foods, to at least 140 degrees temperature to kill off bacteria that can hurt or even kill us. So it is with the Christian. You will be more valuable following your trials, just as gold is more valuable following the application of heat. There's no danger in destroying your godliness in the heat of a trial or a test. Godliness lives in the flames and will survive the same raging heat that will someday destroy the world. How did Job know that he would come forth as gold from that furnace of testing when his friends said that he actually was the problem and not anything else, that he was the problem? But Job, even in his arrogance, he knew something. And here's what he says in verses 11 and 12 of chapter 23. My foot has held fast to his steps. I have kept his way and I have not turned aside. I have not departed from the commandment of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my portion of food. Every child of God will experience the furnace or the furnaces at one point or another to varying degrees. The one lighting the furnace is the one controlling the heat. And since he knows what we need that needs to be removed from our life or strengthened in our lives or restored in our lives or renewed in our lives, he will not harm us. He will not harm you, but he will test you to remove those impurities that are attempting to mix with his righteousness. The goal in his goal isn't to make us a better husband or a better wife or a better child or a better citizen or a better employee or employer. Those are even a better human being. Those are great, but those are residual benefits. God is testing us to become more like Christ and to strengthen our faith. Look at 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. On that day you will be glad, even if you have to go through many hard trials for a while. Your faith will be like gold that has been tested in a fire. And these trials will prove that your faith is worth much more than gold than gold that can be destroyed. They will show you that you will be given praise and honor and glory when Jesus Christ returns. It's only when we stop screaming and trying to understand, or even trying to get out of the furnace, and when we learn to be still and experience that he is God, that we can say with Job, but he knows the way that I take. When he has tried me, after he has tested me, I shall come out as pure gold. My friend, it's not over. Surrender to God. Every single one of us will go through the trial. You know what? This is no less gold than if I had 1,000 pounds of it sitting beside me. It's still gold. Maybe it's not as much, but it's still gold. It's been tested. It's been purified. It's been made more valuable. That's what God is doing in your life. Surrender to the furnace and let God have his perfect work in your life. You will be better for it. And one day, gold is going to be so common, we're going to walk on it. Because that's what God made the streets like. Have a great day. Bye-bye.